Sometimes, a tiny shift in awareness is enough to change the entire landscape of your life. Right now, as you're listening, notice the texture of your breath. Notice how the body rises in its quiet rhythm. In that subtle movement, something far more profound is happening behind the curtain. When you observe yourself gently but deliberately, the world within you begins to reorganize. Not tomorrow, not after you fix everything, but in this very moment. Reality is not a rigid wall you keep crashing into. It's more like a field responding to the vibration of the gaze you cast upon it. Quantum physics has a name for this collapse. Before an electron is observed, it floats in pure possibility. The moment a conscious eye rests upon it, countless potentials shrink into one manifested point. And here's the twist most people miss. You are doing this with your life every day, with the stories you rehearse, with the emotions you habitually choose, with the version of yourself you wake up and slip into like old clothing. Each morning, before your memories reclaim you, there's a subtle sweetness, a quiet gap where identity hasn't been assembled yet. In that moment, you are in what scientists call superposition, all possibilities, all versions of you, existing at once. The peaceful one, the patient one, the brave one, the compassionate one. Think of them as rooms in a hallway, and each dawn, you're given the master key. But most of us rush past that doorway. We pick up our phones, scroll through yesterday's problems, and collapse instantaneously into the same frequency we swore we'd outgrow. Not because we're weak, but because the body loves what's familiar. It's like returning to an old chair, even if it hurts your back, simply because you know its shape. I spent years believing that change came from force, like a stubborn river, trying to carve new banks by pushing harder, but force only reinforces the walls. Real transformation begins from that quiet place inside where you choose differently before the world can choose for you. Your breath is the first language of that choice. A slow inhale says, "I am safe." A long exhale whispers, "I am open." You see, your body isn't just flesh and bone. It's a living archive of every chemical storm you've survived. The panic, the disappointment, the rush of adrenaline that once kept you alive. Cells remember these waves and wait for them. Like old friends arriving at the door. When you stop feeding them, the body trembles, not as punishment, but as withdrawal. It's learning to live without the fuel of fear. That's when most people give up. They mistake uncertainty for danger. They run back to what they've always known. But consider this, the butterfly doesn't return to the cocoon simply because its wings feel strange. As you practice observing yourself differently, you widen the pause between stimulus and response. That pause is sacred. It's the space where you decide who will answer life's calls, the reactive you, or the grounded one who breathes first. Imagine someone says something sharp, something that used to trigger you. In that instant, you feel the old chemistry rising. Instead of reacting, you soften your shoulders, you feel your chest, and you breathe. Congratulations, that's quantum collapse. You chose a new state before the old one could define you. This subtle practice builds coherence. When the heart and brain begin to sync, your energy becomes clean and steady, like still water that suddenly reflects the moon. From that calmness, clarity rises naturally. You don't have to force positive thinking. You create the biology where clear thinking becomes inevitable. What's often misunderstood is that observation is not passive. In the quantum world, observation chooses reality. When you see yourself as small, life contracts around you. When you see yourself as expanding, new doors appear where walls once stood. The universe listens not to your words, but to the frequency beneath them. You can say, "I am peaceful," but if your chest is tight and your breath shallow, the universe only hears contraction. This is why gentle consistency matters. You're not building a new self through dramatic peaks. You're tuning an instrument. Every breath, every posture, every micro-choice is a note in the song you're composing. Over time, the old neural pathways, those highways of habit, begin to fade like roads no longer traveled. New ones form. New emotional circuitry grows stronger. That's not magic. That's biology. There will be discomfort. Think of a river that has run in the same direction for decades. When you redirect it, the ground shakes. The water resists. Not because the new path is wrong, but because the old one was familiar. Stay through the trembling. Stay through the emptiness. There's always a quiet field on the other side, where peace doesn't feel forced. It feels like home. Here's something else to notice. When you change your frequency, your environment shifts too. People who once resonated with your anxiety may drift away. Not because you failed them, but because your new state filters the room differently. The right people, those who breathe with you, begin to emerge. Life rearranges itself around coherence. And remember, the heart's electromagnetic field extends outward, touching others before you speak a single word. When you walk into a space with calmness, you silently give permission for others to settle. You become a lighthouse in an ocean of static. The doorway you stand in every morning is not just personal, it's collective. When one person chooses presence over panic, awareness over autopilot, peace over performance, a subtle ripple moves through the field of consciousness. Scientists call this morphic resonance. Once a new frequency is established somewhere, it becomes easier for others to reach it. So your breath does not only belong to you, it belongs to us. Tomorrow morning, before identity stitches itself together, pause. Place one hand on your chest, one on your belly. Breathe like someone safe, not because the world is perfect, but because you're choosing to stop collapsing into the old story. Sense the version of you that's been waiting quiet, steady, unhurried. Let your body mimic that state for a few seconds. The nervous system learns through imitation. Throughout the day, you'll drift. We all do. When you notice it, don't judge yourself. Gently return to the breath and the posture of your highest self. Each return is a thread weaving your new identity into form. By nightfall, you'll feel a subtle shift, a softness, a lightness, like a door inside you has opened wider than before. Change doesn't happen in the mind alone. It happens in the body, in the breath, in the posture, in the pause. It's not about pushing the river. It's about removing the rocks. You don't force a flower to bloom. You create the conditions where blooming becomes inevitable. You are not obligated to be the person you were yesterday. You are not a frozen photograph. You are a field of possibility, constantly collapsing into form with every glance. And when you choose awareness calmly, consistently, compassionately, the entire architecture of your life bends toward the frequency you emit. So as this day unfolds, walk gently, breathe deeply, not because you're escaping life, but because you're meeting it fully. Let your presence be the quiet command that reorganizes the world around you. Remember, you are not here to chase the light. You are here to realize you are the light collapsing into form. One conscious breath at a time. 1. The body stores biological memory. There's a strange truth that we don't often speak aloud. Much of what we call the past is not living in your mind. It's living in your bloodstream, in the way your chest tightens when someone raises their voice, in the way your jaw tenses when you feel unseen. You don't repeat yesterday because you think the same thoughts. You repeat yesterday because your body has rehearsed the same chemistry for years. From the womb, through childhood storms, through every triumph and bruise, your cells have been quietly recording, not as stories, but as sensations. A spike of adrenaline when you felt threatened, a squeeze of cortisol when you feared abandonment, a hollowing in the stomach when love felt uncertain, and somewhere along the way, the body whispered, a dangerous equation. Familiar equals safe, not peaceful, not joyful, simply known. So each morning, before you've spoken a word, your biology wakes up before your consciousness. It reaches for what it knows, like an old dog returning to the same worn spot on the floor. Anxiety. Ah yes, we know how to run that. Hypervigilance, easy. The nervous system has the choreography. Self-doubt. That's a muscle we've accidentally strengthened. This is not weakness. It is memory chemical, electrical, embodied. Your nervous system is not trying to punish you. It's trying to protect you with the only tools it understands: repetition. Because once, long ago, those reactions helped you survive. Maybe silence kept the peace. Maybe shrinking kept you safe. Maybe numbing helped you endure. But survival habits don't disappear when the danger ends. They linger like ghosts, asking to be honored, not fought. Sometimes you'll feel like you're struggling against your mind, but often it's your body that has already made the decision. Before a thought appears, chemistry floods your bloodstream, preparing you to be who you've always been. And then the mind arrives as a narrator, trying to make sense of the feeling already taking shape. Imagine walking into a room, sensing tension without knowing why. That's biological memory, recognizing a pattern, a tone of voice, a posture, a certain silence. Your body responds like a sentry who's seen this threat before. Shoulders contract, breath shortens, muscles brassent. And just like that, you're no longer in this moment. You're reliving the first moment your body learned that reaction. This is why affirmations alone often fail. You can say, "I am worthy" 1,000 times. But if your chest is tight and you're breathing shallow, the body hears a different sermon. To change deeply, you must speak the language the body understands. Breath, posture, slowness, presence. These are the ancient dialects that rewrite chemistry. When the body believes something, it doesn't ask questions. It signals the heart, the lungs, the eyes, the skin. It shifts your gaze downward, your shoulders inward, folding you into yourself. It's trying to hide you from danger that no longer exists. Trauma doesn't always scream. It often whispers in the way you put on a sweater, in the way you greet a stranger, in the way you walk into a room. Think of the nervous system like a riverbed carved by decades of water. Even when the storm has passed, the water still remembers the path of least resistance. It flows there automatically. To shape a new path, you don't dam the river. You gently guide it, again and again, until the old groove grows quiet. There will be a phase that feels like withdrawal, not from substances, but from identity. When you stop feeding your body the chemistry of stress, adrenaline, outrage, sadness, there's an emptiness, a quiet vacuum. The body protests, whispering, "Where is the fuel I know? Where are those sharp edges that kept me awake?" And you may interpret that emptiness as loneliness. You may mistake peace for boredom. That's the old chemistry calling you back home. But home is not the place where you feel the most. It's the place where you can finally rest. In time, you'll learn that the body is not the enemy. It's a child repeating what it was taught. It's the violin playing the last song it learned. It needs a new melody, not by force, but by invitation. Gentleness is a form of education. Breath is the chalk that rewrites the lesson. When you breathe deeply during difficult emotions, and you show the nervous system it is safe to stay. When you soften your shoulders during conflict, you reassure the body there is no tiger behind the door. Safety is not an idea, it is a sensation. And sensations teach faster than sentences. I've met many souls who believed they were failing at healing because the old feelings returned. They thought, if I were growing, I wouldn't feel this again. But repetition is not regression, it's rehearsal. The body is asking, this emotion, is it still dangerous? Or can we stay open this time? Healing is not about never feeling triggered. It's about responding differently when you do. When old emotions rise, place your hand gently over your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Whisper quietly to the cells that have carried you through every storm. We are safe now. That simple act communicates through vibration, pressure, and warmth, a language billions of years older than words. And something miraculous begins to happen. The cells listen. The breath slows. The river shifts. Your heart rate falls back into rhythm. You become the conductor of an orchestra that has been playing the same score for decades. Not by shouting, but by presence. Think back to a moment when you felt fully alive, fully seen. That wasn't just emotion, it was chemistry. Coherence. Harmony. The body remembers that too. And with gentle repetition, those states become easier to access. The nervous system learns new symphonies. Many people chase dramatic breakthroughs, but the body changes through steady repetition, through the courage to remain open, through the humility to soften when you want to harden. That is the quiet revolution happening beneath your skin. There will be days when old patterns feel louder than your intentions. Days when your body begs for familiar fear, familiar anger, familiar doubt. On those days, don't fight yourself. Simply pause, breathe, place your feet on the ground, anchor into presence like a tree, patiently rooting deeper into earth. Growth doesn't rush. Slowly, the chemistry of your life shifts. The cells begin to trust peace. The blood learns stillness. The body becomes a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. And you notice that situations which once triggered you now pass through you, like wind through open windows. Not because the world changed, but because the world is now meeting a version of you it cannot disturb. This is the body as ally, not pulling you backward, but walking with you forward. Biological memory becomes biological wisdom. Familiar fear becomes familiar peace. And you realize something astonishing: you were never broken. Your body was simply protecting you with everything it had. Now you are teaching it a new definition of safety, one breath at a time. And when that happens, when your biology and your awareness move in harmony, you stop trying to become different. You simply are different. Quietly, naturally, like dawn unfolding across a field that didn't have to try to bloom. 2. The frequency of observation shapes reality. There's a quiet truth most people don't realize until life has broken them open. At least once, you're not seeing life as it is. You're seeing life as you are. The nervous system, the heart, the old stories in your tissues, the posture of your breath, they act like tinted lenses. And without awareness, you forget you're wearing them. It's like standing in front of a window on a rainy day, blaming the sky for being blurry, never noticing the condensation on the glass. Every moment, we're not just looking at the world, we're translating it. Through vibration, through feeling, through expectation. Two people can stand in the same room, hear the same words, and live in different universes. One feels opportunity, the other sees threat. Not because reality changed, but because their frequency, the subtle field of emotion and belief around them, collapsed the infinite possibilities into a single outcome. Quantum physics stumbled onto this long before spirituality gave it. Language observation isn't passive, it's creative. Just like a wave of possibility becomes a particle when watched, your life becomes the shape of the quality you pay attention to. When you look at yourself through the eyes of insufficiency, the world arranges itself to confirm that belief. When you observe through appreciation, doors you never noticed begin to open, like flowers turning toward the sun. This isn't magical thinking, it's resonance. Every thought carries a frequency. Imagine anger as a jagged vibration, quick and hot. Fear is tight, contracting. Gratitude is smooth, expansive. When your inner field vibrates in a particular way, it attracts matching experiences. Not because the universe is sentimental, but because energy organizes by coherence, like tuning forks. Strike one, and the other hums along. I once watched a man walk into a room and instantly change its temperature, not because he spoke loudly, but because he carried a field of ease. People's shoulders dropped, laughter softened, conversation deepened. No words were exchanged. His frequency did the talking. When you live with that kind of presence, you stop needing to convince or defend. Your energy becomes your signature. On the other hand, there have been moments when I walked into a space carrying silent storms inside me. No matter how polite I tried to be, something tense echoed outward. People became guarded, voices sharpened, not because they were hostile, but because I was collapsing the field around me into contraction. We often underestimate how much power rests in a single shift of perception. It's like changing the channel on an old radio. One notch to the left, and all you hear is static. One notch to the right, and suddenly the symphony is crystal clear. We call these miracles, but they are simply alignment. Most suffering arises not from what happens, but from the frequency through which we view what happens. Lose your job through the lens of panic, and life becomes a threat. Lose the same job through the lens of curiosity, and life becomes a teacher. Reality rearranges itself around interpretation. Here's the subtle part. Observation isn't just with your eyes. It's with your nervous system, with your chest, with your gut. Close your jaw. Lift your spine. Breathe slowly. Notice how the world softens. That's not illusion. When the observer relaxes, possibilities expand. When the observer tenses, options collapse. The body, the heart, the brain, they're not separate observers. They're one instrument, and your breath is the tuning key. When you observe someone through the frequency of fear, they shrink before you. When you observe them through compassion, they begin to blossom. Even strangers feel this. Babies feel it. Animals feel it. Trees feel it when you stand beneath them with an unclenched soul. It's all resonance. Have you ever noticed how someone who constantly expects disappointment often finds it, even where none exists? Their frequency scans for evidence. A neutral expression becomes rejection. A delay becomes disrespect. The world becomes a hall of mirrors, echoing the vibration you walked in with. But when you shift your frequency just a little, life behaves differently. A closed door becomes redirection. A pause becomes patience. Silence becomes space, not abandonment. This is not delusion. It's interpretation shaped by vibration. The mind tries to control. It wants certainty. But frequency is shaped deeper than thought. You cannot think your way into peace while your body is buzzing like a broken wire. Instead, feel your way. Slow your exhale. Let the shoulders drop, like leaves, surrendering to autumn. Your biology receives the message we are not in danger. And suddenly, you see options you couldn't see from fear. Observation is like pouring light through a prism. What emerges isn't the prism, it's the angle. Shift the angle, and the entire rainbow changes. Some people ask, how do I change my reality? They expect a complex answer. But often, the change begins with a softer gaze, a slower breath, allowing silence to speak instead of fear to shout. When you stop attacking life, life stops attacking back. When you stop forcing, new timelines reveal themselves. Think of frequency like music. You cannot play a gentle melody with clenched fists. You cannot hear harmony when the volume of fear is turned up. When you soften, the music of possibility returns. That's why peace is not passive. It's powerful. It holds space for new patterns to unfold. Most conflict begins with misinterpretation. A raised eyebrow becomes insult, not curiosity. A short reply becomes rejection, not exhaustion. We collapse possibility into a single story. But if you pause, If you breathe, if you observe without reaction, a different narrative whispers itself to you. Reality blooms inside that pause. This is why meditation, stillness, walking slowly beneath trees, these things transform us. They widen the aperture of perception. They let you step back from the small self and observe through a larger lens. When you change the way you look at life, the life you are looking at changes. What would it feel like to observe yourself through kindness instead of criticism? Not flattery, not denial, just presence. The body would soften, the mind would quiet, decisions would become cleaner, people would feel safer around you. That safety is a frequency too, and over time, something surprising happens. You stop needing life to behave a certain way in order to be at peace. Your peace stops depending on outcomes. That's when your frequency becomes magnetic. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You're shaping it simply by the way you stand in its presence. Remember, the world is not just reacting to what you do. It's responding to who you're being while you do it. When you observe with fear, you collapse into scarcity. When you observe with love, you collapse into abundance. Love isn't a feeling, it's an organizing force. Each breath is an invitation to contract, or to open, to collapse possibility, or to hold it gently. Your gaze creates waves in the field around you, and the field listens. So tomorrow, when life asks, "Who are you today?" pause before you answer. Breathe. Let your frequency speak first. Because the way you observe the world is the way the world will unfold around you. Quietly, elegantly, in perfect resonance with the vibration you choose to carry. 3. The morning state of superposition. There is a doorway we all pass through every single day, and yet almost no one sees it. It's so subtle, so ordinary, that we step over it, half asleep, without realizing we've just crossed sacred ground. It's the moment when you first begin to wake, before your name returns to you, before the weight of yesterday assembles itself like armor around your chest, before identity pulls you back into shape. In that tiny sliver of time, less than a breath, softer than a whisper, you are no one and everyone. You are not the story you tell at dinner. You are not the roles you juggle. You are not the worries that cling like dust. In that moment, you exist as pure potential. Scientists would say you're in superposition, the ability to be many possible versions of yourself at once. The poet might say you're suspended like morning dew, reflecting every possible sunrise. And the remarkable part is you feel it every morning. There's a lingering softness, a gentle spaciousness. The world hasn't arrived yet with its labels and expectations. Your nervous system hasn't remembered who it's supposed to be. Your cells haven't begun producing the chemical storms of your past. You're hovering in a liminal space, suspended between the infinite and the defined, but because the moment is so brief, most people never recognize it. They grab their phones, scroll through the noise, check notifications, and collapse instantly into yesterday. It's like watching a bird fly out of a cage, only to turn back and close the door behind itself. Not because the cage is safe, but because it's familiar. If you pay close attention, you'll notice something delicate happening as you wake. Before thoughts form, there's only sensation, breath moving in your belly, warmth in your chest, the hum of life returning. Your body isn't performing yet. It's just being. And in that being, there's immense freedom. Your identity is not automatic. It's chosen. It's assembled, piece by piece, memory by memory, emotion by emotion. But in the morning gap, those pieces are scattered on the floor. You're not obligated to pick them up. You can leave some behind. You can choose differently. Think of it like standing in a room full of doors. One leads to the version of you who always rushes, one to the version who doubts, one to the version who is patient, curious, and alive. another to the one who breathes before reacting. When you wake, every door is open. The moment you think a familiar thought, you shut the rest. The moment you feel a familiar fear, you lock yourself into a single hallway. That's collapse. The body will be the first to reach for the old door. It remembers the chemistry of fear and stress more than the mind remembers words. But instead of letting it drag you, you can pause, lay a hand gently on your chest, breathe into your ribs, loosen the jaw. These gestures tell the body today, we walk differently. Some cultures have ancient practices honoring this moment: the morning sit, cils prière, hand on heart, kneeling on cool earth. They understood what modern life has forgotten: the morning is not a routine. It's a reset. When you wake, I don't rush to remember who you were. Let yourself linger in the softness. Feel what it's like to exist without story. When you stay in this space for even a few seconds longer than usual, your nervous system begins to learn that peace is safe. That stillness isn't danger, that you don't need tension to exist. And here's the quieter truth. Identity is heavy. We carry our names like stones. We carry our responsibilities like chains. But your true essence before story, before survival, is light. It doesn't push. It doesn't clench. It flows, like slow water, finding the easiest path. Returning to that essence, even briefly, recalibrates everything else. Imagine for a moment you're waking on a coastline. The tide is low, the air cool. You haven't remembered the tasks of the day yet. In that space, you are simply consciousness resting in a body. If you learn to stretch that moment gently, not forcefully, not as a goal, but as a welcome, you would begin to choose your frequency instead of inheriting it. Because here lies the secret. The first frequency you choose in the morning becomes the conductor of the rest of your day. If you choose panic, the nervous system tightens. The day collapses into urgency. If you choose ease, the body expands. The day collapses into coherence. In the early morning, before the mind begins its commentary, there is no enemy. There is no failure. There is no self-criticism. The inner voice hasn't woken yet. It's like meeting yourself before the world has had a chance to tell you who you need to be. And when you meet yourself there, with softness, you plant different seeds. You're no longer reacting from the past. You're responding from presence. That's how timelines shift. You might think the moment is too small to matter. But consider this: the slightest tilt at the beginning of a journey changes the entire destination. A single degree different, walked over miles, will lead you to an entirely new horizon. So tomorrow, when awareness returns, resist the urge to grip the old story. Don't chase memories. Don't recite yesterday. Instead, feel your breath. Sense the weight of your body on the mattress. Let your consciousness sit like a quiet candle flame in your chest. That's you, before the world. Over time, as you practice resting in this morning superposition, you'll notice something profound. Anxiety won't be the default frequency. Doubt won't be the first visitor. The old chemistry will begin to fade. A new biological memory takes root, one of calm, clarity, and grounded presence. The body learns that peace can be familiar too. Identity is like clay, and morning is the warm water that softens it. Some mornings, you will feel the urge to rush back into your narrative. Hang on to it like a shield. Be patient. The nervous system is learning. The child inside you is learning. The cells in your bloodstream are learning. Let the morning teach you how to be unburdened. Because if you can hold yourself gently in that gateway, the rest of the day bows in response. People speak to you differently. You listen more deeply. Decisions arise from clarity rather than fear. And you begin to see that reality isn't demanding anything from you. It's mirroring who you are being. Life becomes less about effort and more about alignment. Less about performing and more about allowing. You find that the world doesn't need to be controlled when you're already connected. Eventually, you realize the morning gap never closed. It simply followed you throughout the day, waiting for breath, waiting for awareness, waiting for you to drop the name you carry so tightly. So tomorrow, before your feet touch the floor, remember, you are not obligated to become yesterday's self. You are not a photograph. You are water. You are breath. You are consciousness, choosing its shape. And in that moment, soft, unhurried, unnamed, you are free. 4. Breath and posture send biological commands. There's a truth so quiet, so embarrassingly simple, that most people step over it for decades. Your body is always speaking first. Before the mind decides how to feel, the body has already whispered its suggestion through muscle, breath, and posture. And if you've lived through long seasons of stress or uncertainty, the body learns to clench as a form of prayer, jaw tight, shoulders curled, breath shallow, chest guarded. It's as if the body is bracing for impact before anything has actually arrived. But what many never learn is this: your body's posture isn't just responding to your inner world, it's shaping it. When you open your shoulders, even just an inch, the brain receives a message that danger has passed. When you soften the jaw, the nervous system loosens its grip. When you lengthen the exhale, the heart rate slows, blood pressure falls, and chemistry shifts. These are not symbolic gestures. They are biological instructions. Think of breath like the conductor of an orchestra. If the conductor rushes, the violins tremble, the horns flare, the rhythm becomes chaotic. But when the conductor moves slow, deliberate, with space between movements, the music reorganizes into harmony. Your breath is that conductor, waving quietly over every organ, every hormone, every neural pathway. Most people try to change their lives by thinking harder. They wrestle with their minds like trying to tame a wild horse with sheer argument. But the nervous system doesn't speak the language of thought. It speaks the language of sensations. It listens to tension in the shoulders, the tilt of the head, the lift or collapse of the chest. These postures evolved to communicate survival. When you curl inward, the brain assumes threat. When you expand, the brain assumes safety. Safety is not imaginary. It is a chemistry. There's a moment you've felt thousands of times, though you never named it. You're walking down a hallway. You hear sudden footsteps behind you, and your shoulders rise. Jaw hardens. Breath freezes. The body has already chosen survival posture before a single thought appears. That's the nervous system's ancient job. And because of that, posture can keep you stuck in yesterday's fears without you realizing it. But here's the part that changed my life. You can reverse the loop. Instead of the mind shaping the body can shape the mind. When you stretch the lungs fully, pressure sensors in the heart and lungs send signals upward, saying, "We are safe." Lower the guard. The brain, trusting the signals, releases a wave of hormones aligned with calm, and suddenly, the world looks less hostile, not because reality changed, but because you did. Try something gentle. Unclench your jaw. Feel how the rest of your face softens automatically. Relax your tongue. Notice how thoughts lose some of their urgency. The jaw is one of the first muscles to tighten when we're afraid. Letting it go is like telling the brain, there is nothing to bite, nothing to defend. The subconscious hears that message louder than any mantra. The shoulders are another sacred gateway. They store years of unspoken tension. Each shrug is the body trying to rise above fear. And slowly, we begin to live slightly elevated, never landing fully in ourselves. When you roll them back, not aggressively, but like someone returning home, you're reminding your body that it can inhabit space, not shrink from it. The nervous system responds by widening the field of awareness, allowing you to see options instead of threats. Breath and posture are often the first things fear tries to steal. Because if fear can make you breathe shallowly, it can limit oxygen, tighten vision, numb creativity. Think of the last time you panicked. Did you breathe deeply, or did your breath turn into tiny sips? Fear hates long exhales, because long exhales activate the parasympathetic, the body's deepest wisdom. With every slow exhale, you are telling the ancient animal inside you, "We will not run today." You don't have to force positive thoughts. You simply create the biological foundation where positive thoughts can grow naturally, like sunshine on soil. Without that sunlight, even the best advice sounds like noise. Imagine a tree in strong wind. It bends, but it has deep roots. Your breath is those roots. When the world shakes, your body begins to sway. But if you keep breathing deeply through the earthquake of emotion, your chemistry will not topple you. You'll feel the fear, but it will not own you. Posture isn't about looking confident. It's about telling your limbic system, the oldest part of your brain, that you're not prey. When the chest collapses inward, the subconscious reads one sentence: "We are small, and everything is bigger than us." But when the chest opens, gently, without pride, the subconscious reads another: "We are here, and we can meet life." It's not about dominance. It's about willingness. Your breath also connects you to time differently. Shallow breath locks you into urgency, tightens the sensation of now into a trap. Deep breath stretches the now into a landscape. Suddenly, you can pause long enough to choose. Life becomes spacious. Think of all the arguments that have ever hurt you. How many of them came from reacting without breath? How often did the version of you who snapped feel like a stranger? That version was simply oxygen-starved, chemically hijacked by survival instinct. One long inhale, one long exhale, and the stranger dissolves. People talk about raising vibration as if it's mystical. It's not. Vibration is just the pattern of your nervous system's electrical and chemical signals. When breath slows, oscillations synchronize. When posture opens, energy flow becomes coherent. Consciousness becomes less noisy, and you can hear subtle truths again. Here's something tender: you don't have to earn your next breath. Breath is grace. It arrives without permission, without proof of your worth. What a teacher! Breath does not hurry. It does not worry. It simply continues. And when you follow its rhythm, your life begins to resemble something wiser, slower, more compassionate. There will be mornings when your chest feels heavy before your eyes even open. On those days, don't fight the heaviness. Simply expand your breath beneath it. Your lungs will move the weight, like tides moving stones. Slowly, patiently, breath is the softest form of strength. Sometimes, I place one hand on my chest and one on my belly, not to perform a ritual, but to remind my body that I am here, not leaving. The warmth of my palm becomes a message. You are seen. You are held. That warmth travels down the vagus nerve like a lullaby. Posture and breath are the first things babies learn to regulate when they feel safe in someone's arms. We grow older, but the biology remains the same. When we are held by our own hands, by our own breath, we return to trust. And slowly, something profound begins to shift. Your external world responds. Conversations soften. Decisions clarify. Opportunities align. Not because the universe finally decided to help you, but because you stopped sending the signal of threat. When the body feels safe, reality changes shape. So tomorrow, when you feel life pressing into your ribs, pause. Roll your shoulders back, even half an inch. Unclench the jaw. Place your tongue gently at the floor of your mouth. Breathe slow. Let the exhale be longer than the inhale. Don't try to fix anything. Don't chase understanding. Don't negotiate with fear. Just breathe. Watch the world rearrange itself around that single, gentle act. Because when the nervous system shifts, your perception shifts. When perception shifts, reality shifts. And sometimes when the breath is long enough and the heart soft enough, your entire life begins again. Right there, in the space of a single exhale. 5. The chemical withdrawal phase. There is a moment on this inward journey that very few people talk about, not because it's rare, but because it's misunderstood. It's the moment when you finally stop feeding your body the familiar chemicals of anxiety, panic, hypervigilance, and adrenaline. And instead of feeling instantly liberated, you begin to tremble. You feel empty, restless, foggy, as if something is wrong. This is where most people turn back, because the body, like any longtime companion, has grown attached to what it knows. For years, sometimes decades, it has been bathing in the chemistry of stress. Adrenaline has been the spark that kept you alert. Cortisol has been the drumbeat that pushed you forward. Fear has been the rhythm that shaped your days. Your cells became accustomed to living on edge, scanning the horizon for threat. So when you finally choose peace, not through fantasy, but through breath, posture, awareness, the body panics. Not because peace is wrong, but because peace is unfamiliar. Your biology whispers, where is the fight? Where is the conflict that gave us meaning? Where is the rush that made us feel alive? And you sit there, hands trembling slightly, wondering if you made a mistake. But you did not. You are witnessing the nervous system learning a new language. Chemical withdrawal is not just for substances. It happens with emotions. 2. Every time you rehearsed worry, your body produced a cocktail of hormones. Like a barista who remembers your old order. It kept serving fear every morning, even after you stopped asking for it. And when you suddenly refuse that order, the body becomes confused. It feels the absence like hunger, like loneliness, like grief. That is not failure. That is reconfiguration. Imagine living next to a railroad track for 20 years. The noise becomes part of your silence. And one day, the trains stop. At first, the quiet feels wrong. Too wide, too strange, too still. You wake at night, listening for a sound that never comes. That's what happens inside you. When cortisol and adrenaline fade, silence feels suspicious. Your cells have been addicted to urgency. They've been using adrenaline like caffeine. They love the spike, the push, the narrowing of focus. So now, as you slow down, the body shakes, not because danger is present, but because danger is absent. The nervous system must now learn to live without crisis, and that is uncomfortable. Think of a river that has carved deep grooves into earth, always flowing the same way. One day, you gently redirect its course. The water resists the new path, not because the old one is better, but because erosion has reinforced the old one for years. That's all habit, is carved earth. As the chemicals shift, the body enters detox. You might feel tired without reason, restless without urgency, sadness without story, agitation without target. These are not signs you're regressing. They are signs you're releasing. Your biology is excavating old patterns from its cells, shaking loose the gravel of yesterday. Many begin this journey expecting bliss, but healing often looks like confusion first. Peace, when unfamiliar, feels like nothingness, like floating without anchors, like silence that echoes. And this is where compassion matters most. Place your hand on your heart. Feel its rhythm. It has worked tirelessly for you through heartbreak, through exhaustion, through every late-night storm. It doesn't stop simply because the chemicals changed. It beats patiently, waiting for you to trust the quiet. Withdrawal is not punishment. It's the nervous system asking, are we truly safe? And every gentle breath you take answers that question anew. You may notice strange emotional waves, anger, sadness, irritability. These are old chemicals leaving your bloodstream. They rise to leave the body, not to haunt your mind. Let them pass like weather. You don't yell at a storm. You watch it move across the sky, knowing clear blue lies behind it. What most people forget is that the body doesn't recognize joy as safety when it has lived in survival for years. It recognizes intensity. It recognizes urgency. So when you begin to inhabit calm, it asks, is this numbness? Is this loss? But calm is not emptiness. It's the removal of noise. Think of a crowded room suddenly growing quiet. Your ears ring because they're adjusting. Your cells are doing the same. During this phase, to be gentle with your posture, soften your shoulders, elongate your exhale, speak kindly inside your chest. These gestures teach the body something profound. We do not need chaos to feel alive. And slowly, the chemistry shifts. Serotonin begins to circulate. Oxytocin races in gentle waves. The heart rate finds steadiness without panic. The brain stops scanning endlessly. Vision literally widens. Colors seem different. Sounds feel softer. You begin to notice things you hadn't felt in years. Your feet on the ground. The comfort of breath. The warmth of sunlight on your skin. Neural pathways are rewiring, forging new trails where fear once lived. This is neuroplasticity, not in theory, but in muscle memory, in heartbeat, in posture. But understand this, clearly the old chemicals will call you back, not maliciously, habitually, like old friends saying, "We miss you." They will lure you with familiar thoughts, familiar fears, familiar narratives. The invitation then is simple: don't follow, sit through the pull, breathe into the tremor, watch the wave without riding it. When you refuse to collapse into old chemistry, you are teaching the body a new definition of safety. Over time, adrenaline becomes less seductive, cortisol becomes less persuasive, drama loses its flavor, urgency loses its throne, and peace quiet. Steady peace becomes recognizable, even nourishing. One day, you will wake up and realize the trembling is gone. Not because you fought it, but because you didn't feed it. You allowed the body to remodel itself. And in that moment, you'll understand something deep. Healing is not becoming someone new. It's teaching the body to remember who you were before the world frightened you. So if today you feel shaky, tender, uncomfortable, do not abandon yourself. Sit on the edge of your bed, place a hand on your chest, and whisper gently, "We are safe now." Stay with the breath. Let the silence fill the cracks. Adrenaline once occupied. Because beneath the withdrawal lies something ancient, a nervous system that finally belongs to you, a heart that beats without bracing, and a self no longer fueled by fear. This phase is not the end of you. It's the beginning of you without the chemicals that once convinced you otherwise. 6. Micro-choices shape your trajectory. When people speak about transformation, they often imagine something dramatic, a lightning bolt of clarity, a powerful breakthrough, a single moment where life tilts and never returns to its old shape. But anyone who has walked through real change long enough eventually discovers a quieter truth. Transformation rarely announces itself. It arrives through tiny doors. It comes through the smallest decisions you make again and again. Often when no one is watching, we tend to overestimate the power of grand resolve and underestimate the power of steady rhythm. A declaration, "I will change," feels exciting. It floods the bloodstream with temporary energy. But a declaration is just sound. A trajectory is shaped by actions so subtle, they almost go unnoticed. The way you breathe before you speak, the way you pause before you react, the way you choose presence over panic for just one more moment. These micro-choices bend reality. The way a gentle thumb on a bowstring shifts the entire direction of the arrow. Think of your life like a long voyage at sea. If you steer the ship just 1 degree differently, you may not notice much in the first hour. The horizon looks the same, but sail far enough, and that single degree becomes an entirely new continent. Small adjustments compound. Over time, they rewrite destiny. The body loves the familiar pathways carved by years of repetition. When faced with discomfort, your autopilot will urge you to react quickly. Snap back. Numb out. Withdraw. Defend. But every time you soften instead of harden, every time you breathe instead of brace, you lay down a new neural track. The mind is plastic. The heart is teachable. The nervous system listens. The world won't clap for these moments. No one will hand you certificates for choosing to exhale rather than explode. But the deepest growth doesn't need applause. It's like the slow widening of a riverbank. You only notice years later that the landscape looks different. For example, consider the moment you wake. If you reach for your phone immediately, the nervous system collapses into yesterday's frequency. But if you linger with breath, stretch gently, place a hand on your chest, just 30 seconds, you have already shifted the day's direction. That choice may seem invisible, but it teaches your biology that you, not urgency, are driving. Consider the moment someone speaks to you with tension. You can mirror their frequency, escalating the spiral, or you can soften your shoulders, breathe low into your belly, and answer from spaciousness. One reaction strengthens survival chemistry, the other builds coherence. Over months, these tiny forks in the road accumulate. You become someone less controlled by the weather of others. These are micro choices and they matter. People ask, how do I change my identity? They imagine they must become someone new overnight. But identity is the average of 1,000 small behaviors, repeated so often the body forgets they were choices at all. When you choose to stand a little taller, relax your jaw, or breathe deeper, even once, you're signaling the nervous system to rewire. When repeated, the nervous system eventually says, "Ah, this is who we are now." One day you will realize the anger that once swallowed you doesn't rise as fiercely. The anxiety that once hijacked your breath dissolves more quickly. The impatience that once lived in your shoulders melts before it sharpens. Not because a miracle occurred, but because you kept turning the dial millimeter by millimeter toward presence. Think of a crowded freeway. At first, traffic moves chaotically. One small car changing lanes seems meaningless. But enough small adjustments in the pattern, and suddenly the entire flow opens. Your internal world is similar. Every small choice influences the wider field. When you catch yourself slipping into old patterns, don't fight. Fighting creates tension. Instead, notice. With gentle curiosity, awareness itself is a micro-choice. Noticing is the beginning of repatterning. The mind says, "You're not doing enough." But your nervous system knows the opposite is true. Fewer frantic decisions, more grounded ones. A micro-choice might sound like this. Instead of scrolling, I will breathe. Instead of reacting, I will listen. Instead of clenching, I will soften. Instead of rushing, I will move slowly and deliberately. These are tiny acts of rebellion against old chemistry. Old habits are loud. They say, do something dramatic, but wisdom whispers, do something gentle, and do it again tomorrow. We have been conditioned to worship intensity, big goals, big leaps, big transformation. But intensity burns out. It spikes the nervous system, exhausts the hormones, and leaves us feeling like failure is personal, when it's actually biochemical. Gentle repetition is what rewires you. Imagine placing a drop of water on stone every single day. For a long time, nothing appears to change. But over years, that steady rhythm carves a hollow. It shapes the stone itself. That's what your small decisions do. They carve you from the inside out. When you choose to breathe slow during anxiety, you're teaching your vagus nerve that you can remain present in discomfort. When you choose curiosity over judgment, you're expanding the field of possibility, collapsing fewer timelines. When you choose stillness instead of urgency, you're signaling your biology that survival mode isn't required. These shifts accumulate like quiet savings in a hidden bank. One day, you wake wealthy with peace. And there will be days when you forget, when the nervous system grabs the steering wheel, when old reactions return like ghosts. In those moments, the micro-choice is compassion, not discipline, not shame. Shame drags you backwards. Compassion opens the next breath. Whisper internally, "We're learning." That phrase alone is a psychological pivot. When you choose kindness toward yourself, you dissolve old neural patterns of self-attack. That's a micro-choice that changes the future. There's a common myth: I will change when I feel ready. But readiness is built through doing, not waiting. When you behave like the version of yourself you aspire to become, even in tiny ways, your biology adapts. Neurons firent, hormones shift, identity rearranges. You don't wait for change. You behave your way into it. Your trajectory is not a straight line. It's a series of microscopic tilts, each one shaping the next. Tilt toward presence today, just a degree. Tilt toward kindness tomorrow. Tilt toward slowing down the next day. Look back after months, and you'll see you've crossed an ocean. And here's the quiet beauty of micro-choices: they're doable. Consistency becomes less daunting. Healing becomes accessible. You no longer chase transformation. You invite transformation, one gentle choice at a time. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by how far you still have to go, return to the body. Relax your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Breathe slowly. Choose presence for just 10 more seconds. That alone can shift the chemical tide. Miracles aren't always loud. Sometimes they sound like a soft inhale in a silent room. Sometimes they look like a relaxed spine. Sometimes they feel like patience, reaching farther than impatience could ever stretch. Your life does not change through force. It changes through frequency, subtle, repeated, embodied. You are not defined by the choices you made once. You are sculpted by the choices you make often. And often begins with small, just a millimeter today, a millimeter tomorrow. Eventually, you'll look back and realize you didn't just change your life. You changed your direction, one quiet breath at a time. 7. The small pause before reaction. There's a quiet place inside you that almost no one teaches you to look for. It's not big or dramatic. It doesn't come with flashing signs or heavy emotion. It's subtle, so subtle that it's easy to overlook. But this place holds a kind of power that can change the entire trajectory of a moment, a relationship, a life. It's the pause, that thin sliver of space between stimulus and response. Most people don't notice it. Something happens. Someone raises their voice. An email arrives. A memory surfaces, and before the breath can settle in your chest, the reaction is already spilling out. A sharp word, a slammed door, a tightening of the shoulders, a familiar narrative. Here we go again. The body acts, the mouth moves, and afterwards comes the shame, the regret, in the sigh. Why did I say that? It's not because you're broken. It's because the nervous system is fast, faster than conscious thought. It was designed for survival, not harmony. For millennia, reacting quickly kept you alive. There was no time to pause when hearing a twig snap in the wild. But in modern life, where most threats are psychological, that ancient wiring often works against us. Here's the truth. You don't need to change your reactions. You need to change the space before them. That space, the little breath-sized doorway, is where choice lives. But to feel it, you must slow down enough to notice it. It's like spotting a hummingbird hovering in midair. Blink too fast, and you miss it. Pause, and you realize it's been there all along, shimmering quietly on the edge of your awareness. Imagine you're standing in front of someone who triggers old wounds. Maybe their tone echoes a parent's disappointment, or their silence reminds you of abandonment. Your chest tightens, breath shortens, heat rises in the face. This is your nervous system ringing alarm bells. The reaction is old, rehearsed, embodied. But if you can catch just one thing, the inhale, something shifts. Suddenly, that ancient chemistry loses its grip. You feel your feet on the ground. You remember that you are here, not there. You can respond as the person you are now, not the child you once were. The pause is not about silence. It's about presence. In that breath, dozens of microscopic changes happen. The vagus nerve begins to soothe the heart. Cortisol levels stop climbing. The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, comes back online. Vision widens. Literally, you see more options. Time seems to slow, just a little. A breath is not just air, it's information. Without the pause, you collapse into instinct. With it, you collapse into awareness. Think of two versions of yourself standing side by side. One reacts with old programming: fear, defensiveness, sarcasm, withdrawal. The other responds from groundedness, curiosity, patience, dignity. The breath chooses which self steps into the room. It's astonishing how much we suffer simply because we respond too quickly. We assume meaning without asking. We defend without listening. We armor up before anyone has aimed a weapon. But when breath comes first, curiosity follows. You might ask, what am I actually feeling right now? What does this say about where I'm hurting? Is there another story here? And suddenly, the conversation becomes less about winning and more about understanding. The pause creates emotional freedom. Without it, you're a puppet pulled by old chemicals. With it, you cut the string just long enough to choose differently. This practice isn't glamorous. It won't earn you applause. No one will even see the most important battles you fight. The real victories happen inside your chest. Quiet wars between the old you and the emerging one. There will be days when you miss the pause completely. When words spill out too fast. When you feel the sting of regret. Those days are not failures, they're reminders. Tomorrow, you will have thousands of chances. Every interaction is another doorway. Some people think spiritual growth is about transcendence, but often, it's simply about one more second of breath, one more moment of awareness, one more pause that prevents you from becoming who you are no longer willing to be. Think of how many conflicts in your life could have dissolved if you had paused just one breath sooner. Think of how many relationships could have softened, how many arguments could have turned into conversations, how many wounds could have healed instead of deepened. The pause is mercy, and not just for others, for yourself. In that breath, you can say, I will not speak from my wound. I will not act from adrenaline. I will not abandon myself to be right. That decision is a quiet revolution. The body may still tremble with old chemicals. The heart may race. That's okay. The pause doesn't require perfection. It simply requires remembrance. Breathe. Feel your ribs expand. Feel your shoulders settle down your spine. The nervous system listens to posture more than words. Calm is a shape the body can learn. Over time, something extraordinary happens. The pause gets bigger. What was once only a split second becomes 3 seconds, 5, then a full breath, then 2, and in that widening, the old version of you loses power. You become slower to anger, softer in tone, more discerning, compassionate without being fragile, firm without being sharp. You speak from clarity instead of the noise of emotion, and people feel it. Your presence becomes safer. The world doesn't change, but the world you create inside interactions does. Remember this, the pause is not passive. It is active, courageous, and deeply intentional. Anyone can react. A pause takes strength. It's easy to let the storm inside you spill out. It is far harder to sit with lightning in your ribs and breathe until the thunder fades. Over time, as you practice this sacred gap, life begins to trust you with deeper peace. The universe hands more responsibility to those who can hold their breath before they use their voice. So next time your chest tightens, your jaw clenches, your palms heat, close your eyes for half a second. Inhale slowly. Feel your weight on the earth. Allow the old identity to pass like a cloud. One small pause, one small breath, 1 millimeter shift in direction. That's how storms pass. That's how generations of inherited reaction end. That's how a version of you that you've never met begins to step forward. Calm, clear, and quietly unshakable. The pause is only a breath, but sometimes a breath is enough to change everything. 8. The environment reflects the mind. There's a moment on this journey when you begin to notice something quietly astonishing. The world around you starts to mirror your inner state. Not in a mystical, grandiose way, just in small, subtle shifts. People respond differently. Opportunities look closer. Tension softens in places it once sharpened. It's as if reality itself is rearranging furniture while you're not looking. And the deeper you pay attention, the more clearly you see the pattern. Your environment is never neutral. It's always echoing your nervous system, your beliefs, your unspoken expectations. The way a room feels depends less on the furniture and more on the frequency you carry into it. When you walk in armored, the world becomes sharp. When you walk in open, the world becomes spacious. This doesn't mean everything turns easy overnight. It means the lens through which you meet life sends out an invisible broadcast, and the external world responds to that broadcast instinctively. Imagine two people walking down the same street. One, anxious and clenched, sees danger in every shadow. Eyes dart, breath short, shoulders high. They attract cold stares, rushed interactions, closed doors. The other walks with ease, breath deep, shoulders open, eyes soft. They attract smiles, patience, tiny sparks of generosity from strangers. Same street, different field. The world is not changing, the observer is. Your nervous system is a transmitter. When it runs on fear, it narrows perception. You see fewer options, fewer allies, fewer exits. When it's grounded, perception widens. You notice possibilities that were always there, but unseen, like stars invisible under daylight. This is not fantasy, it's neurobiology. The brain's threat circuitry literally narrows vision and attention. Suddenly, everything looks like a potential problem. The environment feels hostile, not because it is, but because your body is rehearsing an old script. Change the internal script, and the environment reveals different pages. Think about the last time you were deeply anxious. Did people feel colder? Did conversations feel sharper? Did every delay feel personal? That's not coincidence. That's resonance. We are constantly tuning to the frequencies around us. When your frequency says danger, others unconsciously tense, even if they don't know why. When your frequency says ease, others find themselves breathing deeper without meaning to. Sometimes, when you begin to heal, people who were once comfortable around you will drift away, not because you've done anything wrong, but because the dynamic that once bound you together relied on shared tension. If you stop vibrating at that frequency, the relationship loses its familiar gravity. They're not villains. They're simply built for a different weather. The same is true for opportunity. When you carry the frequency of desperation, doors seem to close. It's like trying to force open a window in a storm. The harder you push, the tighter resistance becomes. But when you move with openness, opportunities appear in unexpected angles. You overhear the right conversation. You meet someone at the perfect moment, not because the universe handpicked events for you, but because your nervous system stopped filtering them out. Consider how water reflects the sky. When water is shaky, the reflection distorts. When it's still, the sky appears perfectly. Your environment is your water. Your frequency is your sky. When the water settles, clarity appears, and clarity makes navigation easier. I've watched people break their backs, forcing life to move. They hustle, push, chase, pound on doors. They tighten their shoulders and call it grit. And sometimes, yes, persistence is noble, but more often, that energy broadcasts scarcity, fear, lack. The world mirrors it back: more scarcity, more fear, more lack. They become trapped in a self-fulfilling network of reflections. When you change your frequency, you no longer need to slam doors open. They slide open, as if pulled by gravity you didn't know you possessed. It doesn't mean life becomes effortless. It means effort aligns. You stop rowing against the current. You start steering with it, and the environment responds. Have you ever noticed that when you're grounded and calm, people speak to you differently? Their tone softens, their eyes brighten, even conflict unfolds with more grace. Not because the world suddenly learned manners, but because your presence rewrote the script. Sometimes, people say, I'll feel safe when my environment changes. But biology tells a different story. The environment changes when you feel safe. When your body stops broadcasting threat, your perception stops hunting for it. Your nervous system stops selecting danger from the menu of possibility, and the world tastes different. Let's talk about rooms. You've walked into rooms that felt heavy. Nothing happened, but the air felt stale. That's nervous system resonance. Someone in that room was vibrating with fear, shame, or anger. You've also walked into rooms that felt like sunlight. That's coherence, the feeling of someone who breathes deeply, whose posture is open, whose nervous system is rhythmic, not chaotic. You can become that person. When your frequency shifts, the environment reorganizes. People who once triggered you lose their power. Conflict becomes conversation. Silence becomes rest instead of danger. The same hallway you used to dread becomes neutral, even gentle. Not because fluorescent lights changed hue, but because you did. There's something else. As you raise your frequency, the environment begins to offer mirrors you've never seen before. Strangers' kindness, unexpected compliments, surprising ease in moments that used to trip you. These are subtle echoes of alignment. And when you slip back because everyone does, you'll see life tighten again. Not as punishment, but as feedback. The world is always whispering your internal state back to you. Of course, this is where misunderstanding creeps in. This isn't about pretending to be positive or suppressing emotion. Your frequency doesn't rise by smiling harder. It rises by breathing deeper, by telling the nervous system, we are safe now. By treating yourself as someone worthy of slow exhale. Imagine you're holding a tuning fork. You strike it, and another tuning fork across the room begins to vibrate. You didn't touch it. That's resonance. Your environment is full of tuning forks, people. Timing, opportunities, circumstances. When you vibrate differently, you activate different forks. Over months of gentle self-regulation, your life begins to reflect who you are, not who you fear you are. You meet people you couldn't when you were clenched. You notice paths invisible when your gaze was narrow. The world becomes a collaborator instead of an opponent. Eventually, you will realize something sacred. You don't have to control everything around you. You only need to tend to what's within you. When you do, reality shifts without force. Not because you commanded it, but because you invited it. So tomorrow, when you step into the world, don't ask, how can I change this environment? Ask, what frequency am I broadcasting into it? Then breathe. Open your chest, relax your jaw, and watch quietly as the world changes shape around the space of your presence. 9. Recognizing emotion without labels. There's a quiet art. Most of us were never taught how to feel without naming, without fixing, without turning sensation into a story. We grew up in a world that asked us to explain everything, to rationalize, to make meaning. But emotion don't speak English, or Vietnamese, or any language the mind can translate neatly into words. Emotions speak through warmth in the chest, pressure behind the eyes, trembling in the hands, heaviness in the belly, and the sudden, unexplained ache in the ribs. When something painful rises inside you, the mind rushes to do what it always does: label. This is anxiety. This is sadness. This is anger. This is fear. And the moment you name it, you also summon your personal history with that name. You collapse into memory. You resurrect old stories. You amplify the signal instead of allowing energy to move. The label cages it. But what if, just once, you didn't name what you were feeling? What if you simply noticed the sensation the same way you'd watch a cloud pass across the sky? Not personal, not threatening, just weather. The nervous system is ancient. It processes emotion through sensation. A wave rises, peaks, and falls. But because we label, resist, and analyze, we trap the wave halfway. It circles inside the body like water searching for an exit. That's what stuck energy is. Unfinished emotional cycles. Recognition without labeling is how you let the wave finish. Pause for a moment. Feel the body. Notice if your chest is tight or open. Notice if breath feels deep or shallow. Notice where tension hides. These are not signs you're broken. These are messages, doorways. When you stop resisting old emotion, something profound happens. The sensation often intensifies for a heartbeat, then softens. That softening is release. Energy that was once frozen begins to melt. It's like ice, remembering it was always water. We often fear sensation because we believe feeling equals danger. That was true once, maybe when you were small, alone, unseen. But you're not that child anymore. The nervous system hasn't gotten the memo, so when an old feeling returns, your biology assumes you're still in the scene where it was born. That's why the body shakes, heats, clenches. It's finishing an old story through movement, not words. The mind wants to control. It wants to say, "This is sadness." It means, "I'm failing." Or, "This is anger." It means something is wrong. But emotion is not meaning it's movement. In Spanish, the word emotion comes from mover, to move out. Emotions are supposed to move through you, not define you. When you allow sensation without adding narrative, you detach identity from feeling. You're no longer sad. You're simply a human who feels sadness moving through the body. You're not anxious. You're someone experiencing the energy of anxiety. This subtle shift loosens the grip of the past. Imagine holding a burning coal and gripping tighter because you want to understand it. The tighter you hold, the more it burns. When you release, the coal cools in air. Emotion is the same. Gripping through analysis hurts. Opening through presence heals. When you drop the labels, you create space. And space invites light. Not metaphorical light. The literal shift in the nervous system when the brain stops sounding alarms. And in that space, clarity arises on its own. Quiet as dawn. Insight doesn't arrive through force. It arrives when the mind is still enough to hear it. There's a practice you can try next time emotion surfaces. Place your hand gently over the area where sensation lives. Don't squeeze. Just rest. Feel the warmth ease into skin. Breathe slowly through your nose. Ask silently, where do you feel this? Not why do you feel this? Why is a story? Where is sensation? Sensation is how the body heals. You might feel heaviness in the stomach, a rock, a knot, warmth, cold, tingling. That is the language of release. As you breathe, imagine the sensation softening by 2%, then 2% more, not forcing, allowing. When you resist nothing, everything moves. We tend to judge certain emotions as bad: anger, jealousy, fear, grief. But emotions are not moral. They are mechanics. Anger protects boundaries. Fear warns of novelty. Grief honors what was loved. Jealousy reveals desire. Shame points toward authenticity. Each emotion contains a message wrapped in discomfort. When you label it as wrong, you miss the message and keep the pain. Acceptance doesn't mean endorsement. It means acknowledgement. It means letting the body speak without censorship. Ironically, when you allow emotion, it usually dissolves faster. Resistance is the glue. Think of a child crying. If you tell them to stop, the sobbing intensifies. But sit quietly beside them. Breathe slowly. Offer presence, and they calm. Emotions are the same. They want company, not control. There's a gentle dignity in saying, "I feel something rising. I don't need to name it. I just need to witness it." Witnessing is how trauma metabolizes. Presence is the enzyme. Some sensations will feel familiar. They've been circling for years, waiting for a moment of safe release. When you finally allow them, you might cry without knowing why. You might shiver. You might sigh deeply. That's energy leaving the body. Not dramatic, not mystical, biological. And then, something shifts. Breath deepens. Vision widens. The nervous system stops scanning place. That is the body's way of saying, "Thank you. We can rest now." Life becomes spacious again. Conversations soften. Choices feel clearer. The future doesn't loom like a threat. And perhaps most importantly, you become kinder to yourself. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned to sit with imperfection without violence. When you stop labeling emotions, you stop labeling yourself. You stop saying, "I am broken." You begin saying, "I am healing." And healing is not the absence of sensation, it's the permission to feel without drowning. Over time, you'll notice patterns. Certain sensations arise from old stories you've never spoken aloud. As you witness them, they lose their charge. The body integrates wisdom at a cellular level. You don't need to understand everything to release it. Somatic healing is often wordless. Remember, light doesn't need to fight darkness. It only needs room. When emotion rises again tomorrow, place a hand on your heart. Feel the pulse. Slow your exhale. Soften your stomach. And whisper not as command, but invitation. You are allowed to move. Then wait, not for answers, but for space. Because every time you choose presence over labels, the stuck places become rivers again. The pressure becomes flow. The ache becomes warmth. And the darkness becomes simply another shade of human experience. One day, you will look back and realize you didn't conquer your emotions. You befriended them. And in doing so, you allowed light to enter places that had never been touched. That is healing. Quiet. Simple. Deep. 10. The nervous system loves the familiar. There comes a point on the inner journey where you realize something uncomfortable but profoundly important. You can want change with every cell of your mind, yet feel your body dragging you back toward the very patterns you're trying to escape. It's not sabotage. It's not weakness. It's the nervous system doing what it has always done, choosing the familiar over the unknown. For most of us, the nervous system learned safety from repetition, not from truth. If your childhood taught you to brace, to worry, to stay alert, then vigilance becomes home. If teenage years taught you that conflict means connection, then drama becomes a twisted form of intimacy. If you learn that disappointment follows hope, then skepticism becomes your shield. Over time, these states become chemically reinforced. Cortisol, adrenaline, and protective hormones become the body's version of comfort food. And here's the strange part. The body doesn't know the difference between familiar pain and genuine safety. It only knows what it has practiced. Your nervous system would rather cling to predictable suffering than risk unfamiliar peace. Because peace, to a nervous system conditioned by stress, feels suspicious. It feels like silence before an attack. So when you finally begin to soften, to breathe, to choose new responses, the body doesn't celebrate right away. Instead, it whispers panic. Something is missing. Something is wrong. It trembles, not because the new path is harmful, but because it's unpracticed. Change feels like danger until repetition transforms it into safety. Imagine someone who has lived their whole life in a storm. The roar of thunder becomes comforting background noise. When the storm ends, the quiet is deafening. The body tenses, waiting for lightning. Peace feels like emptiness. Stillness feels like boredom. That's the addiction to stress chemistry. It's not about wanting drama. It's about the brain being sensitized to stimulation. The nervous system becomes like an addict searching for its next spike. Many people mistake this feeling for intuition. They say things like, "Something feels off when it's calm." That's not intuition. It's withdrawal. The nervous system is craving the chemicals of doubt, of tension, of conflict, of urgency. It's reaching for what has always fueled it. You might notice this in subtle ways. The moment life becomes gentle, you find yourself worrying about something irrelevant. You poke at old wounds. You pick old arguments. You scroll for bad news. This isn't self-harm. It's biochemical craving. The nervous system is trying to recreate the state it knows how to survive in. We're never taught to recognize this craving. Society praises high stress as productivity. It praises urgency as importance. It praises anxiety as responsibility. The nervous system learns to worship the rush. Meanwhile, calm gets misinterpreted as laziness, boredom, or even failure. To heal, you must teach the body what the mind already knows. And this is where compassion matters, more than discipline. If you shame yourself for being drawn back to drama, the body tightens further. Shame is also a familiar frequency. It keeps you looping in old chemistry. But when you meet those impulses with curiosity, my nervous system is craving what it knows, you begin to loosen the grip of habit. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion. Suppression is tension. Tension fuels the very chemicals you're trying to release. It means observing the impulse without collapsing into it. This is how the brain rewires. Neuroscience calls this process prediction error, minimization. The brain constantly predicts what will happen based on the past. When the present is different, the brain panics. Not because the present is dangerous, but because it violates the prediction. Your nervous system would rather be accurately miserable than confusingly safe. So how do we retrain it? Slowly, kindly, repeatedly. Every time you breathe through discomfort instead of reacting, you're sending a new message. Every time you respond gently instead of escalating, you're creating new wiring. Every time you choose curiosity over assumption, the nervous system relaxes a little more. Tini moments accumulate. The body starts to trust peace. There will be a phase when peace actually increases anxiety. Calm feels too quiet, too open, too exposed. That's the nervous system detoxing from adrenaline, like someone stepping off a loud, vibrating machine and feeling the room spin. The shaking is not a sign that peace is wrong. It's the body adjusting to a frequency it hasn't known how to hold. Think of it like moving into a new home. The first few nights, you don't sleep well. The furniture smells unfamiliar. The silence feels strange. Eventually, though, the new walls absorb your breath. They tune to your rhythm. That's what happens internally. As you practice new states, the nervous system learns to call them home. There's no shortcut through this. You cannot intellectualize safety into your body. It must be felt, repeatedly, until the familiarity of fear fades. Someday, sooner than you think, something remarkable happens. Drama feels exhausting. instead of stimulating. Silence feels comforting instead of scary. Presence feels nourishing instead of empty. Stillness feels rich instead of boring. This is the moment you realize you've crossed a threshold. The body now trusts what the mind learned long ago. Peace is not the absence of life. Peace is the presence of enoughness. And from that state, choices look different. You don't chase people who drain you. You don't argue with voices that want to win instead of understand. You don't cling to patterns that fractured your nervous system, not because you're avoiding them, but because they no longer feel like home. The most beautiful part. When the nervous system learns peace, it doesn't just help you survive, it helps you thrive. Creativity blooms. Intuition sharpens. Relationships deepen. The world feels safer not because the world changed, but because your cells stop living like prey. So be gentle with yourself during this transition. When you crave old chaos, don't shame the craving. Recognize it as a withdrawal symptom. The nervous system is thawing. The body is relearning. Old chemistry is dissolving. Place your hand on your chest and whisper softly, as if to a scared animal, "We don't need the storm anymore." Then breathe. Peace might feel unfamiliar today, but with time, repetition, and compassion, it becomes not just familiar, it becomes home. 11. Placing your hand on your heart to awaken a new frequency. There's a simplicity to healing that we often overlook because it seems too ordinary, too quiet to matter. We expect transformation to roar, to arrive with fireworks and revelations. But the body doesn't speak in spectacle. It speaks in whispers, in breath, in posture, in the smallest shifts of attention. And one of the most tender, powerful gestures you can offer yourself is this: place your hand on your heart. It sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but within that simplicity is ancient intelligence. When your palm rests over your chest, something shifts, not just psychologically, but biologically. You activate the vagus nerve, a wandering highway of information that sends signals of safety to the body's deepest systems. Heart rate slows, breath deepens, muscles soft. The body receives a message older than language. You are here. You are safe. We don't realize how often the body forgets this. For years, many of us have lived with shoulders raised, breath stuck in the throat, pulsing with the chemistry of vigilance. The nervous system learned to scan for threat, even in moments of calm. It learned to brace before anything could arrive. And in that bracing, the heart was often left alone, beating behind a cage of ribs and tension. When you place your hand on your heart, you open the cage. There's warmth in the palm, your warmth. That warmth communicates presence. It tells the nervous system that the danger that trained it has passed. It interrupts automatic loops of survival and invites a new state to take shape. Think about what happens when a frightened child comes crying into the arms of someone who truly sees them. Often, no words are needed. The simple act of being held changes their breathing. The crying softens. The body lets go of tension. You are that child, and you are also the arms. The mind will always rush to analyze. It will say, "This is silly." But the body doesn't understand concepts. It understands touch, pressure, warmth, rhythm. These are the first languages we ever knew. Long before we learned words, we learned heartbeat. Even now, if you close your eyes and place your palm on your chest, notice how the breath changes. Notice how the mind quiets just enough to hear sensation. Notice how the ribs expand into your hand, not aggressively, but like a tired traveler leaning into support. This is connection. The vagus nerve responds to gentle pressure and slow exhalation. It slows the sympathetic firestorm, the rush of adrenaline and cortisol that fuels reactivity. You are literally telling the brain to stop running old scripts. This is the moment where the new version of yourself can step forward. Every time you do this, you're writing new code into the body. There's also something symbolic about the gesture The heart has been a metaphor for centuries: love, intuition, courage. But beneath the poetry lies physiology. The heart produces an electromagnetic field measurable several feet from the body. When you touch it, you're anchoring attention in the most coherent part of your system. Attention is energy. Where you place it grows. Try this when you're overwhelmed. Sit with both feet on the ground. Rest your hand on your heart. Let the breath fall lower, slower. Don't force. Allow. You'll feel the edges of panic soften. That's not magic. That's biology. Your consciousness shifts. The prefrontal cortex wakes up. You begin to respond instead of react. The version of you that was shaped by fear steps aside for the version shaped by presence. In that space, choice returns. Notice that when you panic, the hands often fly to the head as if the mind must work harder. But the mind is rarely the one that needs help. When the hand travels downward to the heart, you shift authority. You say, "We will not solve this from panic. We will meet this from coherence." Sometimes, after placing your hand on your heart, you might sigh without meaning to. That sigh is the nervous system releasing. It's the body saying, "Finally, I don't have to hold everything alone." Other times, tears may rise. This is also release. The heart stores what the mind cannot process. Whatever falls from the eyes is what the body can no longer carry. There will be days when placing your hand on your heart feels futile, when the mind is loud, when thoughts race. But even then, stay. You're not trying to silence thought, you're offering the body another option. Healing is not about eliminating sensation. It's about changing the relationship you have with it. The more often you practice this gesture, the faster the nervous system responds. At first, it might take minutes, then seconds. Eventually, the body remembers peace before panic. You build new default settings. It's important to understand that this is not spiritual bypassing. You're not avoiding emotion. You're containing it, holding it, letting it move through the body without drowning the nervous system. You become a witness rather than a victim. Over time, you'll notice your reactions change subtly. You might breathe before responding. You might soften before defending. Conversations will begin to feel different, not because other people changed, but because your frequency did. This gesture becomes a kind of internal parenting. You learn to comfort the parts of yourself that were never comforted. You learn to offer safety from within, so you do not chase it from others. And then something beautiful happens. External chaos stops defining your internal state. You carry a quiet center with you, like a lantern in a storm. The heart becomes a sanctuary, not a battlefield. Let's be honest. Change is frightening not because the new is dangerous, but because the familiar is intoxicating. Drama, tension, urgency, they flood the bloodstream, creating intensity that feels like aliveness. The hand over the heart interrupts this addiction. It whispers. Aliveness can be gentle. When old patterns rise, and they will place your hand there, not to push them away, but to say, "I'm here with you." The heart knows how to metabolize what the mind can't name. You may feel the beat press back against your palm. That is your life answering you. That is the conversation you were never taught to have. One day, you'll do this gesture without thinking, just like you would comfort someone you love. Except this time, that someone is you. The nervous system changes through repetition. Every time you choose this gesture, you're strengthening a new pathway, a new identity, a new relationship with sensation. So, slow down. When the world speeds up, pause when the old reactions surge. Place your hand on your heart. Feel its warmth. Feel the pulse. Let the breath drop low. And listen, not for words, but for the soft, steady reminder that has always been there beneath the noise. You are safe. You are here. You can choose a different rhythm. In that moment, your frequency shifts. And with enough practice, that shift becomes your new home. 12. Moving through withdrawal with gentle presence. There's a phase in healing that almost everyone encounters but few people truly understand. It's that uncomfortable stretch of time when you've stopped feeding your nervous system the familiar chemicals of stress, urgency, conflict, and self-criticism, yet the body still craves them. Not because they were healthy, but because they were known, and when you take them away, the nervous system can feel like a room, with the lights suddenly turned off, disoriented, shaky, searching for something to hold. This is withdrawal, not from substances, but from states. And the only way through it is not by force or argument, but by quiet. Gentle présence. Peacefulness is not merely the absence of threat. It's a message, a biological signal that says, this moment will not harm you. But the body doesn't believe new messages right away. It needs to be shown. Withdrawal shows up in subtle ways. Restlessness, impatience, a sudden urge to create drama, the itch to check your phone, a compulsion to worry, irritability with no clear source. The nervous system whispers, give me something to feel, because for so long, feeling on edge meant you were alive. But here's the quiet truth. Peace can feel like nothing at first. Emptiness. Even silence. It's not that peace lacks substance. It's that the senses are adjusting to a new frequency. Like eyes stinging when they first meet sunlight. The discomfort is not evidence of wrongness. It's evidence of recalibration. The body has learned to equate activation with safety. It thinks, if I'm tense, I'm prepared. If I'm worrying, I'm controlling. If my heart is racing, I'm alert. So when you soften, the body panics, not because softness is harmful, but because it's unfamiliar. In those moments, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing dramatic at all. Be still. Sit quietly. Let your breath lengthen on the exhale. Release your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Notice the way the chair beneath you supports your weight. Notice the way the earth holds you up without needing anything in return. Silence is not empty. Silence is the nervous system learning a new alphabet. Every time you soften instead of tighten, something rewires inside you. You're sending a new message down the vagus nerve, into the heart, the lungs, to the gut. Being alive does not require bracing, and the body slowly, hesitantly relaxes its grip. Withdrawal isn't a sign of failure. It's the body detoxing from adrenaline, cortisol, and hypervigilance. When those chemicals recede, the body feels underwhelmed, unstimulated, flat. And many people mistake that flatness for sadness. They return to drama because drama gives them a rush. But what they're really craving is familiarity. To move past this phase, you must teach your body that calm is not danger. Calm is not numb. Calm is capacity. The practice is simple, but not easy. Stay tender in the discomfort. That means you might feel tired. Let yourself rest. You might feel bored. Sit with it. You might feel like reaching for your phone. Pause instead. You're not punishing yourself, you're rewiring. Think of it like teaching a frightened animal that your hand won't hurt it. You don't yell at it to calm down. You sit close, gently, and wait. Over time, the animal comes forward. Your nervous system is that animal. Withdrawal often brings old emotions to the surface. Grief may rise. Anger may simmer. Shame may bubble. When these old tides appear, don't drown. Float. Observe. Whisper quietly, I can feel this and still be safe. That sentence alone changes chemistry. Some days, the process feels like regression. You'll think, why am I anxious again? I was doing so well. But healing isn't linear. It's a spiral. Each loop brings deeper layers into light. You're not sliding backward. You're revisiting the wound with more capacity. The breath becomes your compass in this terrain. A long exhale tells the nervous system, we are not running. even if the mind disagrees. The body listens to breath first. The breath is older than language, older than memory, older than trauma. It's the first thing you ever did. It knows the way back. Try this when you feel agitation rise. Don't fix it. Don't scroll away from it. Don't analyze it. Simply become curious. Where in my body do I feel this? You might notice a tight chest, a clenched stomach, trembling hands. These sensations are the nervous system unlearning its fear. Stay with them, not as punishment, as companionship. When you resist nothing, everything moves. You might experience moments of emptiness so wide, you don't know what to do with them. Sit there. Let emptiness become spaciousness. That space is where new identity grows. A warning: the old chemicals will try to seduce you. You'll be tempted to doom scroll, to overthink, to argue, to rush. These are old neural highways whispering, "Come home." But their home is a prison cell built from familiarity, not truth. Gentle choices are your hammer. Each breath cracks a brick. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is relax. Not collapse, relax. Relaxation is not giving up. It's giving in to presence. When you unclench your jaw, your brain receives thousands of signals in a single moment. We are not preparing to bite. We are not in danger. The nervous system learns through evidence, not promises. So give it evidence every day. Sit quietly for a few breaths. Walk slower. Eat without rushing. Let silence fill the room. Feel your feet on the ground. Tiny acts of peace create massive cumulative change. One morning, you will wake up and notice something strange. The quiet will feel comforting instead of threatening. The body won't reach for worry to feel alive. The nervous system will sigh like someone finally allowed to rest. That is the moment peace becomes familiar. Withdrawal ends not when discomfort disappears, but when safety becomes embodied, when calm becomes muscle memory, when your heart no longer startles at silence. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: you no longer chase peace. You emit it. People around you will sense it. They'll breathe deeper without knowing why. They'll soften their shoulders as they speak. Because a regulated nervous system regulates other nervous systems, you become a tuning fork of calm. So if you're in the thick of withdrawal right now, shaky, restless, bored, pressured, don't abandon yourself. These are the last tremors of an old identity crumbling. Place a hand on your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Whisper to the body like a friend who finally gets to rest: we are safe. We don't need the storm anymore. Peace can be home. And little by little, the body will believe you. 13. Neural coherence. There is a kind of quiet intelligence that awakens when the heart and brain begin to speak the same language, a harmony we rarely notice, yet always feel. Most of us live with these two centers out of sync. The mind races ahead into imagined futures, analyzing, calculating, preparing to protect. Meanwhile, the heart lingers in memory, carrying echoes of old wounds, tenderness, longing. When the head and heart vibrate on different frequencies, life feels fractured, decisions feel heavy, reactions come faster than intention. We become both the fire and the fuel of our own overwhelm. But when coherence arises, when heart and brain begin to pulse in rhythm, something remarkable happens. You become less reactive and more responsive, less frantic and more clear. The nervous system stops treating every unknown moment like a threat. You begin to choose rather than defend. That shift changes everything. Neural coherence isn't a concept from fairy tales. It's measurable. When the heart beats in a smooth rhythm, slow, even, consistent, the brain waves follow. Creativity increases. Problem-solving opens. Emotional resilience strengthens. Intuition sharpens. You don't just think more clearly, you feel truth with the body. Choices that used to confuse suddenly feel obvious. That's because coherence quiets the static that once drowned out your inner voice. Imagine an orchestra warming up. Each instrument plays its own scale, out of rhythm with the others. The sound is chaotic, overwhelming. That's the state of incoherence. Different parts of you playing different songs. But then the conductor lifts his hand, and suddenly, the notes align. Instruments breathe together. One unified sound emerges. That is coherence. It's not that chaos disappears. It just becomes arranged. When the heart and brain synchronize, the world around you responds in kind. Conversations soften. Conflict becomes clarity. People mirror your pace. Even traffic seems less aggressive, not because the world changed, but because you're no longer broadcasting static. You're broadcasting stability. Most of us didn't grow up learning how to cultivate coherence. School taught thinking, but not feeling. Culture praised speed, not presence. Families taught survival, not regulation. So we learned to live in our heads, dragging the heart behind, like a heavy anchor. We made decisions from fear. We reacted instead of responding. We confused adrenaline for confidence. But coherence can be learned, and its doorway is surprisingly simple. Start with breath. The breath is the bridge between the heart and the brain. When exhalation becomes longer than inhalation, the vagus nerve switches off alarm signals. The heart steadies. The brain shifts into alpha waves, those quiet, creative rhythms where intuition thrives. Even 3 slow breaths can shift chemistry. It's like adjusting the lens on a camera. Suddenly, life comes into focus. Place a hand on your chest. Feel the warmth beneath your fingers. Feel the pulse tapping softly against your skin. Notice how your body responds, not in dramatic ways, but in small shifts. Shoulders soften. Jaw unclenches. The belly stops bracing. The body says, "I'm listening." Then bring the mind to something you genuinely appreciate. Not forced positivity, just gratitude's gentle cousin. Appreciation. Maybe it's a morning breeze, a friend's laugh, the way sunlight falls on the floor. Appreciation changes the rhythm of the heart. The rhythm of the heart changes the rhythm of the brain. Suddenly, coherence begins to bloom. From coherence, reactions become unnecessary. You notice the gap between trigger and response widening. Anger that once erupted now dissolves into curiosity. Fear that once tightened the ribs becomes information, not identity. You act from clarity rather than instinct. And clarity has a quiet power. It doesn't need to prove, defend, or persuade. It simply sees. Without coherence, the mind spins stories. They don't respect me. I'm failing. Something is wrong. The heart absorbs these stories and contracts, preparing for impact. With coherence, those same moments feel different. Maybe they're hurting. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe this isn't personal. Compassion enters the room. Perspective widens. Conflict becomes conversation. The nervous system stops sprinting. There is another gift. Coherence brings discernment. Not the intellectual kind that lists pros and cons. The embodied kind that feels like a deep knowing, an inner compass pointing without shaking. From coherence, decisions feel less like battles and more like recognition. You don't choose, you remember. And reality responds. Opportunities arrive not because you chase them, but because your frequency becomes easier to read. People trust coherent presence. They sense stability. They feel safe sharing ideas, vulnerabilities, dreams. Coherence invites connection. Even the environment seems to organize around you. You notice timing aligning, coincidences blooming like flowers along your path. Not magic, just resonance. Coherence collapses, fewer distorted possibilities. Life feels less like guesswork. But coherence doesn't mean calm at all times. It means congruence. It means the head no longer overrides the heart, and the heart no longer carries burdens alone. Emotion becomes guidance. not emergency. Thought becomes tool, not tyrant. Of course, there will be days when coherence dissolves. Stress surge. Old patterns tighten. The mind yells. The heart aches. Don't panic. Coherence isn't a destination. It's a practice, a returning, a remembering. On those days, return to breath. Return to the hand resting on your chest. Return to the simple sensation of being here. Not fixing, not fleeing, just witnessing. When you witness instead of react, coherence can regrow itself. Some people fear coherence because intense emotion feels like identity. When that identity softens, the mind wonders, who am I without my chaos? But your identity was never chaos. Chaos was the symptom of separation. Coherence is reunion. Reunion reveals your true face. From coherence, emotional waves still rise, but you surf instead of drown. Thoughts still come, but they pass like clouds instead of storms. The world remains unpredictable, but you no longer collapse with it. Try this experiment tomorrow. Step into conversation from coherence. Breathe low. Soften your shoulders. Feel your heartbeat. Speak slower. Watch how others mirror you. Their tone changes. Their eyes soften. Their nervous system copies your rhythm. This is co-regulation. A coherent person invites coherence in others. One coherent nervous system can calm a room of 10 dysregulated ones. That's how powerful presence is. Over time, coherence becomes the default state rather than the miracle. Peace becomes familiar. Clarity becomes natural. Your decisions stop coming from fear of consequence and begin coming from alignment with values. And reality responds differently. It becomes a dialogue rather than a battlefield. You no longer feel like life is happening to you. It begins to happen with you. The world becomes less like a maze and more like a dance. Eventually, coherence reveals a secret. You were never meant to fight your way through life. You were meant to breathe your way through it. When the heart and brain align, you remember who you are beneath survival. You begin to live, not perform. You begin to choose, not react. You begin to respond to life the way a tree responds to sunlight, quietly, gently, steadily. So tonight, when you are alone, close your eyes, place your hand on your heart, breathe slowly, feel the mind soften into the pulse. Listen for harmony. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest. Because every moment of coherence is a moment where life becomes less heavy and more true. 14. The electromagnetic influence of the heart. There is an invisible conversation happening long before words are spoken. You've felt it before you walk into a room and, without anyone saying a thing, you can sense tension, warmth, impatience, or openness in the air. You feel it in your body before your mind can explain it. That's not intuition as something mystical or unreachable. It's physics. It's physiology. And it begins with the electromagnetic field of the heart. Most of us were taught to believe the brain is the command center of everything. Yet, the heart produces an electromagnetic field dozens of times stronger than the one generated by the brain. It radiates in all directions 3 to 4 feet outside the body, measurable with modern equipment. This field carries information, emotional state, internal rhythm, coherence or chaos. When you step into a room, others feel your field before your voice arrives. Their nervous systems read you like weather. So when your inner world is tight, racing thoughts, clenched muscles, braced breath, your heart broadcasts turbulence, and those around you unconsciously contract. They speak faster. They defend. They retreat. Communication becomes strategy instead of connection. But when your heart rhythm is calm, coherent, spacious, others breathe easier. Their shoulders drop. Their voice softens. They open. No words required. Your state changes the field. Your field changes the room. You've seen this in small ways. Think about the friend who doesn't say much, but makes everyone feel safe just by being present. Or the person whose anger enters the space a full 10 seconds before they do. Their heart is broadcasting and everyone is listening with their nervous system. This is why personal healing never stays personal. Every time you regulate your inner world, you become a tuning fork for the collective. When one heart finds coherence, it can help others regulate without either person knowing why. Healing ripples outward. The heart has neurons, tens of thousands of them. They remember, learn, make choices, independent of the brain's command. This heart-brain influences intuition, emotion, decision-making. When your heart is anxious, the brain tries to solve the feeling. It spins, it catastrophizes. But when the heart is settled, the brain receives micro-signals that whisper, "We're safe." And suddenly, clarity blooms. The electromagnetic field of the heart also resonates with the Earth's own magnetic environment. That's why walking in nature slows the heartbeat, smooths the breath, steadies thought. Your field synchronizes with something older and quieter than fear. It's not mystical, it's measurable. When your heart rhythm becomes erratic, when you react, defend, or brace, you broadcast that rhythm outward. Not intentionally, just biologically, others feel pulled into that storm. But when you slow your exhale, soften your chest, and return to presence, your field becomes coherent, and coherence is contagious. Think about a flock of birds changing direction at the same instant, or fish swimming in synchronized patterns across coral reefs. There is an unseen conductor coordinating movement, not through thought, but through field resonance. Human beings are no different. We co-regulate through fields we cannot see but always feel. When your heart is open, when gratitude, compassion, forgiveness flow through it, the field carries information that says, "There is no threat here." Others feel safe enough to drop their armor. Conversations deepen. Misunderstandings dissolve. Truth becomes speakable. This is why spiritual teachers across traditions emphasize the heart not as metaphor, but as mechanism. The heart is a transmitter. It sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So, when you calm the heart, you quiet the mind naturally. You don't have to wrestle thoughts into silence. You regulate their source. Many of us never learned this. We tried to change our life with sharper thinking, stronger force, more control. But force broadcasts tension. Tension broadcasts scarcity. Scarcity pulls matching experiences into your field. When you shift into heart coherence through breath, through gratitude, through gentleness, you broadcast sufficiency, and life echoes it back. Notice how animals respond to heart fields. Dogs gravitate toward calm people. Horses refuse to be led by frantic energy. Babies cry when someone is internally chaotic, even if they're smiling on the outside. They're not reading faces. They're reading fields. This means you don't heal by pretending to be calm. You heal by becoming calm, because the field only broadcasts authenticity. If you try to act peaceful while holding anger, others feel the static. They flinch, not because you're bad, but because incoherence is uncomfortable. People often say, "My energy feels different lately. People treat me differently." That's because others are responding to a field broadcast, not a personality. Identity can be performed. Frequency cannot. What's fascinating is that the heart's field doesn't just broadcast, it receives. When you sit near someone coherent, your heartbeat gradually synchronizes. This is why sitting beside calm individuals feels like resting inside a quiet cathedral. Their field holds your system until you can hold yourself. There's no arrogance in this. It's simply biology at play. When a tuning fork vibrates, others nearby resonate. You are always influencing and always influenced. That's why intention matters. A single regulated nervous system can shift the tone of an entire family dinner or a team meeting. or a conversation spiraling into conflict. When the heart field is jagged, your reality feels jagged. When the heart field smooths, reality feels cooperative. Not because circumstances change immediately, but because your interpretation changes. Perception shapes participation. Participation shapes outcome. If someone enters your space angry, try this experiment. Instead of reacting, slow your breath and open your chest. Project Coherence. Notice how their tone softens within seconds. Not every time trauma sometimes resists regulation, but often because the body is wired to seek coherence. This is also why the world responds to who you're being, not just what you're doing. You can say the right words with the wrong field, and nothing changes. But speak fewer words from a coherent heart, and transformation begins quietly. Think of the last time you felt truly understood. It wasn't because the other person had perfect language. It was because their field told your body, you are seen, you are safe. Words only clarified what the heart had already said. As you learn to regulate your heart's rhythm, something shifts outwardly. Conversations get lighter. Opportunities feel less forced. Synchronicities increase. People feel drawn to you without knowing why. Not because you're special, because your field is coherent. Coherence feels like oxygen in a suffocating world. And gradually, your presence becomes medicine. Your breath becomes invitation. Your silence becomes shelter. You begin to realize something simple and profound. You do not change reality by controlling it. You change reality by containing yourself. That containment softens the field. Softness invites clarity. Clarity guides action. Action shapes outcome. So next time you enter a room, don't ask, how do they feel about me? Instead, ask, what field am I broadcasting? You'll notice life bending gently around the answer, because the heart has always been the conductor, and when it leads, the rest of you learns to listen. When the observer changes, the world must follow. There comes a moment on this path when you realize that reality was never some external structure towering over you, unmovable and indifferent. Reality is participatory. It listens. It bends. It echoes the tone of the consciousness observing it. And when you shift that consciousness, when you rise above the familiar identity that once clung to fear, tension, and memory, reality has no choice but to reorganize around the new frequency you embody, not through force, not through mental domination, but through vibration. Every deep breath you take is a quiet revolution. Every time you soften your shoulders, loosen the jaw, and allow the nervous system to settle, you're telling your biology a new story. We are safe now, and safety changes perception. Perception changes choice. Choice changes trajectory. You don't need permission from circumstances to become the fuller expression of yourself. If you wait for life to be gentle before you become gentle, you'll be waiting forever. The nervous system doesn't learn peace through victory. It learns peace through practice. People often say, when I feel inspired, I'll take action. But inspiration isn't the starting point. It's the response. Action is the spark that invites inspiration to arrive. Action is the door. Inspiration is the guest, and guests follow open doors, not locked ones. Think of yourself as the lens through which the world focuses. If the lens is cloudy with self-doubt, fear, and reactive habits, the world appears distorted. But when clarity returns even briefly, the world softens its edges. Opportunities glimmer where there once were none. Faces become friendlier. Timing becomes more synchronous. Nothing outside has changed. The observer has. So ask yourself gently throughout the day, what would the wiser version of me do right now? Not tomorrow. Not later. In this breath, you'll notice something subtle, almost imperceptible at first. When you ask that question sincerely, your body responds before your mind does. Shoulders descend. Breath deepens. The pulse steadies. Your tone softens. The nervous system starts to believe that the storm has passed, not because the world became quieter, but because you did. We are told that transformation requires discipline, intensity, massive overhaul. But life doesn't bend that way. True transformation happens in moments, so quiet they almost go unnoticed. It happens when you choose to slow down instead of rush, when you choose curiosity instead of assumption, when you choose to pause instead of react. Those tiny pivots are tectonic plates shifting beneath the surface. And eventually, the landscape of your inner world changes. The old version of you, the one built from survival patterns, doesn't disappear overnight. It will call to you like an old song, nostalgic and familiar. But familiarity is not alignment. It's merely repetition. And repetition is not destiny. Every moment of remembering weakens the gravitational pull of the previous self. Like a muscle, presence grows with use. Like a song, coherence becomes easier to hum when repeated. And one day, without fanfare, you realize you are no longer fighting to stay out of the old identity. You simply no longer fit inside it. At first, you'll wobble. Some mornings you'll wake up and collapse back into the gravity of yesterday, thoughts rushing, memories rising, tension returning. This isn't failure. This is withdrawal from the chemistry of the past. It's the body craving old storms because storms are loud, and it learned to mistake loudness for aliveness. So be gentle. Healing is not the absence of forgetting. It's the speed at which you remember again. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to choose again more often than you forget. That rhythm alone rewires fate. You may notice something strange as you shift. People around you begin changing too, or at least, the way they interact with you changes. Some soften, some drift away, some mirror your calm. The environment is not random, it's responsive. When the observer evolves, the observed reorganizes. This is not magic, it's resonance. The universe is not impressed by how hard you try. It listens to who you are. When you stop reaching and start becoming, life stops resisting and starts reflecting. There's a point where effort dissolves into alignment. You no longer chase certainty. You cultivate clarity. You no longer demand reassurance. You create internal safety. The world begins to respond differently, not because it's kinder, but because you've changed the filter through which you interpret it. And then something subtle, almost sacred, happens. You stop trying to manifest a new reality. You become the frequency that reality cannot ignore. Reality doesn't bow to words or willpower. It bows to vibration. It bows to embodied truth. Tomorrow morning, when you wake, notice the gap before your old identity boots up. In that small, silent pause, you exist as possibility, not memory. Don't rush to fill it with yesterday's language. Your name, your worries, your story. Resist the gravitational pull of habit. Stay there for a breath or two. Let the nervous system taste neutrality. Then, place your hand on your heart. Feel the warmth of your palm against your chest. Feel the pulse pressing back against your hand. Not frantic, not dramatic, just steady. That pulse is proof that the universe has not given up on you. It's a quiet drum reminding you that life is happening now, not in the reruns of yesterday. Whisper softly, not as affirmation, but as instruction today. I choose the version of me that has been waiting, not the anxious one, not the reactive one, not the one scripted by history, the one aligned with presence, breath, clarity, and feel the body respond. You might sigh. You might feel tears rise. You might feel a wave of calm. That is your biology recalibrating. It's not imaginary, it's measurable. When you choose differently, chemistry shifts. When chemistry shifts, perception changes. And when perception changes, reality rearranges. This is how timelines move. Do not wait for reality to shift before you feel safe. Safety is the invitation. Reality is the guest. Feel safe first, even if only for one breath. One breath becomes two. Two becomes a minute becomes a state. And then, without realizing when it happened, you are living a life that feels like exhale. This is not arrogance. This is coherence. As you step into the day, understand, the world is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every interaction, every coincidence, every silence is responding to your internal broadcast. Change the broadcast, and the station changes with it. So tonight, when you lay down, remember you are not chasing a new reality. You are training your nervous system to hold the vibration that new reality requires. And tomorrow morning, when light touches your eyelids, don't rush to be who you were. Pause, breathe, place your hand on your heart. Whisper gently today, I choose the self that is waiting for me. And reality will bow not because you forced it, but because you finally became the version it was designed to answer. Quietly, softly, without spectacle, the world shifts around the observer who remembers